Hello everybody. Welcome to another rapid speedrun game against Kevy Poo, who plays the Sicilian against us at a rating of almost 1200, excuse me. He plays d6 and we can play whatever we want. Let's get the bishop outside of our pawn chain before we close it with a check. Seeing as he can't move his knight, we can always take it next turn. So I'm going to fix my pawn chain, open my bishop. Now that he spent a turn hitting me, I'm going to take his knight and go f4. So now I'm ready to develop my knight behind the f-pawn, which gives me a little more space, a little more control over the center. So let's develop the knight. He plays g6, he's going into the dragon structure, taking control over the dark squares in the center, which makes sense. Another one of Black's plans is to expand b5. He didn't do it this turn, so I am going to go a4 and just slow it down a little bit, give some space to my queen's rook. Fine. Now that he moves the bishop, I'm going to continue and castle. He castles. I'm going to do the calm bishop d2, just making sure my rook is defended, making sure my knight's over defended, just a little bit of harmony, just finishing the minor piece development. He goes a5, which is the opposite of what he wants, because he really wants to expand on the queen side, so he needed to play a6 to help prepare b5 in the future. But by doing what he did, he has a huge hole here that normally doesn't exist. So I will one day jump into it for sure. I could even one day use the rook and attack that way, which is interesting. But for the time being, I'm just going to go queen e1 and see if I can transfer it to the h4 square and his king side. So he breaks anyway, which I thought he couldn't do. The downside is it looks like it hangs a pawn. How do I want to take? I think I'm going to take with the pawn. Leave everything else status quo in the rest of the position, just with the benefit of my rook is now open. So now he fianchettos. It was kind of like a pawn sack in a way for some faster development. So we could just look at it like that. But now we have this added option. Normally this c knight, this queen's knight, maybe it reroutes, but a lot of times it stays here. Maybe one day it jumps in the center. But now we have this option of knight a4, which is a nice square to prepare something like c4, solidifying a passed pawn. But the thing is, if you go here, he can take that pawn immediately, which is unlucky. If you retreat the knight and let him take, sure, you can take this pawn, but that's no good for you. You lose your b pawn, and you kind of lose your asset on the queen side. You don't want to just trade stuff. I don't really see another way to really cement this pawn with the queen here. So I'm just going to connect my rooks, complete my development, do what I wanted, queen h4. Maybe if he moves his queen and doesn't pressure the pawn, maybe then I could jump my knight to a4 and play c4. But, you know, we play responsive chess, we see what our opponent does, and then we make our move. So queen h4, it comes with the idea of f5 and trading the bishops. And okay, so he pushes the pawn. Now it hangs, so I thought he couldn't do this. But it would be a trade of a and b pawns then. So if I take with the knight, then he can take this. If I take with the rook, he would have to trade rooks and then take. However, I don't feel the need to take this immediately. I can wait until my pawn is even safer. I can actually just switch my play over from the king side and do something like rook a3, which is dual purpose. It blockades the pawn. It also gets out of the line of sight of this bishop. One day I can double on the a file and just pick it up with the rooks while maintaining defense of my b pawn. So I'm not going to rush to take it, which I think 99% of viewers would do. Not that it's not playable, but there might be stronger. And so we're already up our pawn, one pawn, and it's passed. So if we can keep it, then we can just win. Now whether we can keep it or not is up for debate. In any case, I'd much rather be white, as I'm not sure what black should do here. Maybe he's going to bring the rook over and target the pawn more, but instead he goes c4, trying to undermine my center where his knight and bishop converge. So I don't want to, definitely don't want to take, even though it looks hanging. That's a trap. And pushing might be a thing if your center wasn't hanging. So instead I'm just going to let him recapture to maintain my center. The drawback of this move is he weakens dark squares. I mean, you could go rook a1, but you could also go f5. Okay, but rook a1, what's his move? Let's assume he throws in takes. Yeah, I don't really see it, so I guess I'm just going to switch it up. I'm going to go with just the queenside play because he made his pawn so weak that, I mean, I just have to play what the position calls for, right? So normally you attack the king, but so I figured he would include this, but now my center is defended. My weak pawn would be the d3 point, but the d file is not semi-open, so his rooks can't hit it. So that's, nothing can hit it at the moment, so it's not as weak as it might otherwise be. We still have our extra pawn, and now we're threatening to take another pawn. Granted, our two pawns would be another b pawn, so it would be two passed b pawn, two isolated b pawns. But still, it's better than not having them. At least if you lose one by accident because of a miscalculation, you have another win condition right behind it. Also, a second pawn is always useful to have because in an endgame, you can put your opponent in zugzwang with the extra tempo. So he pushes the pawn, which attacks the center again. The downside is he's late to the party. We can kick his knight. So let's do that. We also had knight in the center, which I should have calculated because it hits the queen, but I didn't calculate it because I let my finger go too fast. So, not that this is a bad move, especially since the queen does take away, where people normally would go. So he counters, and I was going to say the problem with this is we hit another piece, but so does he, which is funny. Luckily for us, we get to go first. So if we calculate, we get a knight, he gets a knight. We get a bishop, he gets a bishop, we get a rook and a queen. But we get a knight, he takes back, hits our queen. Queen here, he goes back. Yeah, I don't like that fact. Also, we can keep all the threats on the board if we just move our knight. So there's no reason to go tit for tat with this guy when you have a beautiful square in the center. If he takes, you take. His bishop takes. Maybe. You could also try to disallow the bishop. I mean, it's all pretty playable. We could just retreat, but then our pawn might be hanging, but he's hanging stuff. So if we jump in the center and he takes with the knight, And we take and he takes. He's not threatening anything. And what's our move? We take the pawn. He could take this pawn. I mean, that's all So I'm going to retreat the knight and just double attack his central pawn, which is a different threat. Doesn't give him the chance to trade. He could try to put his knight here and use maybe the outpost he has, this weird pawn, but the pawn is going to get captured. So he just takes the pawn with the queen, the one that we were trying to save this whole time, but his knight's hanging, so you don't have time for this. He could get some more pawns, but again, your knight's hanging. So he takes back, not with the bishop hitting the queen, but with the pawn. Okay. It does stifle the knight, so that's something, but he does have a central pawn hanging, that's something. I want the knight to defend this square because after I take the pawn and he takes here, I want to be able to go bishop here. I guess the rook supports it either way. So, huh. Okay, so in that case, let's take with this one. And we're up a clean piece right now. A clean minor piece. His king is safe with all his pawns and bishop around, so logically speaking, the best thing for us to do would be to try to get a queen trade as fast as possible. He's going to try to avoid at all costs, which he should. So he grabs a pawn, but it's protected by the rook. So that's just a blunder. I'm surprised this 1100 held out as long as he did, so not a bad showing. 21 moves. He wants to play on. He makes a pawn move. It doesn't threaten anything. So now my queen doesn't belong here unless I'm gonna like checkmate him on the h-file or something. So let's take a quick look. We threaten mate. He moves the h-pawn. I mean, it's just easier to get the queen on the other side of the pawns, so it's hitting the whole position instead of just a couple things. And it comes for free because it hits the bishop, so can't really complain about this move. We're ready to put our bishop, seriously improve it next to c3 because c3 is way better than what it's doing now because it'll be contesting his bishop, the long diagonal, defending a pawn, defended by a pawn, much stronger square, much, much stronger. And our knights can do whatever they want. Okay. He goes here, he hits a rook, it's a one move threat. I mean, we'll just go here. He's forcing us to create a threat on his position. We're ready to go bishop c3 now with the rook out of the way, right? Otherwise, the rook wouldn't be able to swing to a3 if the bishop was there. So our position is just looking better and better, and we're up 11 points of materials, so that's why. And Kevi Poo, he fought well, and I just get really low on the clock. I need to move faster or something. I just hate moving fast. The whole thing I like is the thinking part of chess. I get everyone else likes the fast part because then they have an excuse for when they make bad moves, but the whole thing I like is the thinking. And he's thinking. There's no way to defend the pawn. There's almost no way to improve his position. Like his rooks are connected, his bishop's on the long diagonal, his bishop's on this central outpost, so you can't really do anything with the bishops better. I guess if you could transfer the bishop to b3, but that's not realistic. He takes a knight, which does attack our knight, so we're going to take backwards. There's this pawn hanging with the fork. We're going to let him do it because we want to get his army off the board as fast as possible, and this might be the fastest way by giving him a rook. So right now he shouldn't even take the rook. He should probably take the bishop because of the dark square weaknesses. But a lower rated player says 5 is a higher number than 3. Let's take the rook. However, here it's kind of clear checkmate's coming, so even he might notice that. he takes this way. If you go straight for the checkmate, he'll just take your bishop. So take it first, and now how does he stop checkmate? He has to go like f6, but he didn't play it. So now we go queen f6. He can no longer play f6, physically obstructing us. And now we have two different checkmate in ones. Less than 30 moves. GG. And we get a nice victory against Kevi Poo. I got this new mouse and the clicks are so loud. So, well, we have one mistake and all zeros. No blunders and not even inaccuracies, just that one mistake, bringing us to a 94. So we play the Sicilian and we develop and control the center. I mean, he plays the Sicilian. We develop for free. And now center and development. Force move and center and development. Development and center prepares king safety. This is development and prophylaxis against b5, very common idea. King safety and development. Just development over defending. Developing our piece and getting ready to swing it over to the king side. Free stuff. Improving our piece. Following our plan. Improving a piece, blockading his pawn. And if you look at the engine, top 4 moves, none of them is to capture the a pawn. So I want you guys to pay attention to how important it is to not capture the a pawn. If you take it with the knight, you lose almost all your advantage as he just takes the b pawn immediately and is threatening your knight. If you take with the rook, he'll trade and the same nonsense happens and you lose almost all your advantage. Still better, but not as good. But we blockade and we save the food for later, right? Because it's not going anywhere. Like when the bear has you injured in the cave, he doesn't eat you right then. He'll come back later. You're not going anywhere. So, okay, so wow. So this was my one mistake. This was when I guess I got thrown off course. Because the best move by a lot is f5. But here I was saying, should I play f5 or should I play rook fa1? And I couldn't decide. Rook fa1 is not even in their top 4. So I'm deciding between the best move, clearly best, and don't even do it. Now when I do it, it's not like black's better or anything. It goes down to plus 0.6 advantage. But it's just, I must have had just a strong attack here. Which I did look at it. I wanted to play it, but I thought that maybe the position called for me to go the other way due to the isolated pawn. But let's see how strong this is. We push. Now he doesn't want to take, of course. He's definitely going to throw this in. And h5, g4, what would I do? Let's say you move the rook to make room for the bishop if I go for it. I go for it, he backs up. Apparently this is just really strong for white still. But wasting my turn on bishop e3 is weird. If I take this and he takes in order to get my... I mean, it's weird. I mean, I'm sure the engine can play this perfectly, but I don't see the exact way to do this, to go about it. I mean, I would have played f5 just for that long-term situation anyway, because it looks nicer for white. So why is this? What's his move here? Okay, so this, what we played is actually, would be just as good as f5 almost, if he didn't have d5. Did I consider d5 in the game? I don't remember. But d5, wait, isn't that what he played? Yeah, that is what he played. That didn't look so impressive though, because of both knight in the center and pawn push, which we found. And he pushes, and then again, we're +3 if he doesn't play the move he played. So he had to play the only move which he played. Now he has to play another only move which he plays. And two best moves are the knight retreat we made and taking the pawn. I didn't even consider taking the pawn, did I? I don't I don't think I did. I think I only looked at this and this, which is super weird because I wanted to go to this square. And it threatens the fork. Yeah, I don't even think I looked in that direction. Super weird. Not that it's a lot better, it's just so weird that I didn't look. Anyway, we went back, and then he has to find. Okay, yeah, he doesn't find it. So, our whole rook thing, bringing the rook over, it's not as good if he finds this whole weird sequence of moves that somehow says that, this pressure on this pawn is no big deal at the end of the day. Playing f5 would have given us better winning chances. Something like that. Hard to explain, but so it's not that our move was necessarily bad, but f5 was stronger. So anyway, we move our rook over. He takes a pawn. We're forced to recapture. He goes here. We're forced to push past for free. He goes here. We're forced to move our knight because these complications favor him. Now the engine really wants him to give up his bishop for the knight, to mess up our structure. I still don't even think that that's bad for white. I mean, white's better, but what I mean is if I just go king f2, protecting my pawns, this diagonal's closed, my king looks safe, looks good for white. Plus, it's hard for humans to give up a bishop that looks this strong in general. So, weird decision. Instead, he goes for the much more natural, taking free stuff. But that's obviously dumb because your knight's hanging, so what's a reasonable move? Just move the knight into the center looks reasonable by a human. I expected him to jump it into the center, and then I was attacking his central pawn. But he didn't do this. He just took a piece and took a pawn and hung a piece, so that was really bad. Then he takes this way, which is super weird. And now I'm free stuff, center, +3. And then he blunders his queen. So there's nothing to go over after that. He blunders his queen. Okay, so I'm in this position. Yes, I can move my rook, threaten the pawn, but he can cause complications. It's kind of weak in spirit, maybe. f5, my pieces are all placed well for this. You generally don't use the queenside knight or rook in this attack anyway to start. So it's kind of irrelevant that they're doing other stuff. They're holding the fort down on their own. You don't necessarily need to make progress right now. It's a long-term thing you have. Whereas f5 is dynamic, and you're either going to have it now or you're not going to have it. And because of the piece layout, I think it's just also called for as well. You're not forcing it through. You're ready to play it. And your rook is actually nice here with that idea in mind because of the rook lift. Okay. Something to think about. Just some analysis so you can see what's going through my head as I look at my own games like this. Submit your rapid games in my Discord. Good luck in your chess. Goodbye.